First and foremost, Commissioner, thank you for doing this.
You're very welcome,
Appreciate you taking the time. First and foremost, what was it that drew you to this profession?
Wow, you know what? To be perfectly honest, I wanted to be a police officer.
Really?
Yes, my bachelor's, my degree is in criminal justice, and just by happenstance, you know, the fire exam came out prior to the police exam. So I took the exam, I did fairly well on it, and you know, the rest is kind of history.
Now, you were in retirement. What was it that drew you out of retirement to come back to the fire department?
Well, I was approached by you know, some members of the administration just to see what my interest level was, and so obviously, you know, I had to think about it. First, you know, I was honored, you know, to be considered, because I think a number of other individuals were being considered as well. So yeah, I considered it an honor to you know, at least be looked at, and obviously I took you know, had to talk with my wife and the family and thought about, you know, some of the ramifications of it, you know, because I was already, you know, a couple of years into retirement, you know, going down that path. But I decided, yeah, you know, I had something to offer. I had the knowledge, the experience, and the background. I thought, you know, that I could do something for the department.
Every leader wants to leave a mark also on their time in leadership. What mark is that you want to leave?
Of course. You know, I often get answered that question, but you know, I'm big into servant leadership. You know, I think my only really reason for being here, myself and the rest of the command team as well, is to, you know, to serve the community, or more specifically, you know, to serve the department. You know, to give the department, give all our firefighters, especially our frontline firefighters, you know, everything they need to get the job done.
Speaking of giving the frontline firefighters everything they need to get the job done, yesterday we heard from the mayor. He said that there's going to be 11 new pieces of equipment. We have heard from an awful lot of firefighters that the equipment really needs to be replaced. What kind of equipment do you want to see the mayor and that money be spent on? Because a lot of the equipment is in disrepair.
Well, I have to take a little exception to the disrepair part, but let me start at the beginning. First of all, we just took delivery of a brand new ladder truck, ladder 15, probably about 6 weeks ago. So that was almost a $2 million purchase right there. The funds that were put in place last year for the out of the capital budget for the major apparatus that we are being purchased right now. Actually, the award has been given out and the vendor identified, and we'll take delivery of another aerial platform and an engine by the end of October, well, in the October timeframe. So on top of that, we also had the mini tracked ambulance. We called it our rapid response vehicle, and that was a takeaway from the November blizzard, actually, where we saw a need for a vehicle of that type. And I brought it to the mayor and said, hey, you know, we're getting a lot of recommendations from our EMS deputy, from our medical director, that this would be a good piece of equipment to have for future emergencies. So he approved it, the mayor approved it to his credit, and that's in production right now as we speak.
Now, you may disagree, but we are hearing from frontline firefighters and the union that a lot of the equipment is in disrepair. You may argue that fact, but they say that some of the firefighters and some of the public is at risk because of the disrepair. Even the Main Street fire, they had to have some engineers come out to work with the truck there. This is going to take months and months to order this equipment. What do you say to those folks that are a little concerned about some of the equipment that is not up to par?
Well, first of all, I'm not arguing that some of our equipment is in disrepair. A lot of that had to do with the November and December blizzard. A number of our apparatus were stranded and had to be left in place until the roads were clear enough to retrieve them. And during that process, a lot of our apparatus were damaged, and some severely. So we're still in the process of repairing those vehicles. But the vehicles that we have on the road right now and the vehicles we have ordered are going to get us in a much better place.
Speaking of the Main Street fire, I believe that the engineers had to go out to that scene because one of the trucks needed some work on it.
Yeah, I believe, and I was there at the scene when that occurred. And I think 20 minutes into the repairs, it was done. I think there was an overheating problem or something in that nature, something minor in nature.
Minor, but did it have any effect on fighting that Main Street fire?
No, it absolutely had no effect whatsoever.
Okay. You mentioned about the snow fighting equipment. You weren't really able to get out there. There are concerns that there is no fire equipment to be able to get to some of these streets during a big storm like that. Are you planning on buying anything like a snow trek or anything that can get to some of these side streets in case of another big storm?
Yes, well, I'm going to go back to the rapid response vehicle, or the mini, we call it the mini ambulance, but it's also called the rapid response vehicle. So it's a tracked ambulance, wheeled and tracked. It could be taken off. It could be used during special events during the summer and spring, time frame, and during the winter we could change it over to tracks, and we use it for that. But we also were approved for $175,000 in utility track vehicles, and we've already identified those, and we're going to be purchasing 4 of those. That's part of our annual budget, and we'll have the funds for those in July. We already did the research into them, and we know the value added because some of the other departments, the state, the county, and on the federal level, we saw what they could do during the storms, and we want to add them to our fleet as well.
So this equipment takes months and months to order. How long do you think it will take to eventually get this new equipment?
Well, actually, I give our superintendent apparatus, Rick Foley, I have to give him a lot of credit because he found the 2 apparatus that we're going to take delivery of in October. They were already in production. So we found 2 vehicles, an aerial platform and an engine that were already in production, because the normal lead time for construction is up to 18 months, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. So we found those in production, and we're going to have them in our hands in October. So a matter of the award was put out maybe a month ago, and in October, less than 6 months, we're going to have those in our hands. As far as the utility vehicles go, July 1st, we'll make the purchase, and we'll probably have those in our hands in a month or 2.
Commissioner, what do you recall about the day of the Main Street fire when we lost firefighter Arno and the Mayday call?
Well, obviously a very tragic day for the department. So I myself and the command team, along with a lot of other department heads, BPD officials, were actually in an incident command class on the 3rd floor of the Dillon building when that fire came in. So, we were monitoring the situation. Started off as investigated. The companies were investigating. Obviously it escalated to a 2nd alarm, then a 3rd alarm, and at that point we were already gathering up our materials and heading over to the scene.
Are there such fires that are called defensive and offensive fires? A lot of people are saying, why was firefighter Arno inside the building at that time when apparently it was a pretty abandoned building?
Well, that's a good question. Obviously, the majority of our fires start out in an offensive nature. So, we'll take the Main Street fire, we'll put that aside for a second, take a single multi-family dwelling, which is most of our fires occur, right? So most of the time we investigate, unless we arrive on the scene that's what we call fully involved, and obviously it's going to be a defensive fire, we always have to take into consideration that the building may be occupied or that dwelling may be occupied. So offense means you're taking a line inside the building, you're going to try and find the seat of the fire, and you're also conducting a search. We always conduct a primary and secondary search, even if even if it looks, we think it's vacant, it's boarded up. You have to think maybe there's vagrants in there, maybe the person who started the fire is still in there, that sort of thing. So, but going back to the Main Street fire, yeah. So you always have to at least investigate first. Okay, so this was a very rare occurrence. Obviously, it was in the middle of the day, major building, major commercial building, in the middle of downtown. Like I said, very rare occurrence. So when the companies arrived on the scene, they had to investigate. I think they went to the building next door first, which is a low rise, and then come to find out, the alarm was actually for the building next door. So another major concern for us is occupancy. Occupancy for us means what's the building used for? If you've never been in the building, companies have never been in the building, obviously you don't know what it's used for. You have to take into consideration the time of day, which means, hey, it's a commercial building, might be people working in there, so there may be people that need assistance as well.
Why was firefighter Arno alone at the time?
Well, I wouldn't say he was not alone at the time. First of all, firefighter Arno was in probably the most vulnerable position that you could be in. He was on the attack side, what we call the attack side of the pumper, which means he's going to get the line, he's going to have the nozzle, his officer's going to be behind him, and he's going to be right there literally at the tip of the spear.
Would you support the DA filing charges if the owner or someone working in the building was shown to have violated some laws?
Yes, I believe strongly that somebody should be held accountable if that was to occur. I don't have any firsthand knowledge of any violations, but it remains to be seen. The investigation is still ongoing.
What would you say, change subject a little bit, about critics of dynamic staffing?
I'll say dynamic staffing has been here since 2015. You know, it's before my time. It was a negotiated item, something that we've learned to mitigate. I mean, there's risk. There's always risk. You can never eliminate the risk totally, but we've done a lot to mitigate the risk associated with dynamic staffing.
Let's talk a moment. A previous commissioner told us 5 years ago that proper facilities for female firefighters, this is 5 years ago, the proper facilities for female firefighters would be in place, particularly at engines 19 and 26. 5 years later, nothing has happened for these female firefighters.
Well, you know, that's very appropriate because I just had a conversation with Deputy Suarez, who's intimately involved with the planning, specifically engine 19. We're just going over the plans in the kitchen just before he got here for general neutral bathrooms for that facility. And all of our, you know, general neutral bathrooms for our females, that's been an ongoing project for the last 3, 4, 5 years.
But a bathroom is just the beginning, really. There are other things. Even showers need to be done for women.
Yes, when I say bathrooms, I mean general neutral, I mean showers, specific areas in the firehouse for them and for their own privacy.
Several firefighters entered the top supermarket, risked their lives before it was cleared out. How would you describe the actions of those firefighters that day?
Just nothing short of heroic, really. I mean, there's nothing more I can say. I mean, they're real heroes, and they save lives. They save lives themselves, and you know, police officers obviously that were on the scene as well.
As you continue to lead the fire department, what does success look like to you?
Well, one of the things we made a conscious effort at the beginning, myself and my command team, was to fully staff the department. When we came on board in 2018, we're somewhere 100, 150 personnel short, and we wanted to make sure that the department was, number one, fully staffed to be able to deal with any emergencies, and that really, you know, came to fruition. I mean, during the pandemic, obviously, we wouldn't have been able to deal with that pandemic had we not, you know, made a conscious effort to staff this department. So it's one thing I want to keep this department fully staffed.
Speaking of that, what will you do if the union decides they want to make a move to repeal dynamic staffing?
Well, there's no really mechanism to repeal it. It's a negotiated item, and you know, I'm open to negotiation. I made that clear to Mr. Ventresca. We could talk about it. You know, show us how we can offset the savings that the city gains for dynamic staffing. I mean, that's why it was put in place to begin with. That's why it was negotiated. So show us where we can find that savings or equal that savings somehow, and let's get together and talk about it. And that offer's always been on the table.
A couple more questions. The fact that the facilities still haven't been fixed for female firefighters, what message does that send to the female firefighters of the Buffalo Fire Department?
Well, once again, actually there was the union filed a PESH complaint, Public Employee Health and Safety complaint, in regards to gender neutral, and we've answered all those questions. They did a review, and they found that yes, we are leaning forward. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last several years in that regard in various firehouses, and just our latest venture is Engine 19 that we talked about earlier.
When can we expect the facilities to be at proper operation for female firefighters?
I would say we're probably 2 to 3 years away from having every single firehouse, every single one of our 19 firehouses prepared to accept, not prepared to accept because they're acceptable right now for female firefighters, will make them even more acceptable.
Mm-hmm. In retrospect, I've been told by the union, some union members, that just prior to the Christmas blizzard that you had left town to go to Florida before an emergency operations center was even put into place. In retrospect, do you wish you had not gone to Florida?
Well, I went to Florida. It was kind of mischaracterized as a vacation because actually it was some family business I had to attend to. So I had every intention of going there and making a quick turnaround, but I went there. Unfortunately, I got caught up in the air travel and everything else that was associated with the storm. It was such that I did have to be down there during that time frame. But I was in touch with the telephonically, text, email.
Most of your deputy commissioners, they were stuck in their homes also.
They were stuck in their homes also. Yeah. So basically, the only time I was not in contact with any of my senior leadership or the mayor or the administration was basically if I was up in a plane at 30,000 feet or in the shower. Other than that, I was in constant contact.
In retrospect, do you think you should have stayed in town and not gone to Florida during the Christmas blizzard?
Well, as I said, it was, I do, I don't want to second guess myself. It was important for me to be down there during that time. if I knew the size and the scope of the storm.
We did know
which
3
we
or
did
4
know.
days before. Everyone was predicting it.
Yeah, we had an idea. And yes, but I made a conscious decision to go there. But I also knew that my deputies were here, and I'm in constant contact with them on a daily basis, on a 24-hour basis. So I knew my physical presence. Although I would have loved to have my physical presence here, I also knew I had input, 24/7.
And I know our time is getting close. I do have one more question. I want to talk about leadership, future leadership. I'm told by some firefighters and union members that people are being pushed up the ranks very, very quickly without necessarily the proper training to become even chiefs. Do you have any concerns whatsoever that people are being pushed up the ranks too quickly?
Well, actually, I'm working with the union. We've been working with Local 282. The first thing we did was extend the time before someone could take the lieutenant's exam. So we made that 5 years. Now I'm working with Mr. Ventresca to try and make it so we have what we call acting officers. If officers on vacation or out for any reason whatsoever, there's an acting officer, which means a normal crew member. One of the crew members steps up and is the acting officer. And right now you can act with 3 years on the job. I'm trying to extend that to 5 years. So I'm working with Mr. Ventresca in that regard. If you have to have 5 years to take the exam, you should have 5 years before you can act as an officer. And that will get you that much more experience because we have less fires now, less emergencies, so it takes a little more time on the job to gain that experience.
Last question. Can you assure the folks at home that everybody is safe in the city of Buffalo in terms of the Buffalo Fire Department?
Oh, of course. We have the best firefighters in the country, I believe. And as far as senior leadership goes, we have the best, at that level as well. So yes, we have a singular focus. Our mission is to protect the lives and property of the citizens of Buffalo, and that's all we think about. And then the tools that we need to put in our firefighters' hands to complete that mission.
And I promise, final question.
Sure.
The site of the fire on Main Street where firefighter Arno so honorably gave his life, what would you like to see be done with that space?
There definitely will be something to commemorate his courage, something to honor him, and his legacy. So there will be something on that site. What form it will take, I'm sure the family will have some input into that. The department will have some input into that, and yes. And I'm sure whoever owns that property or will own it in the future will work with us in that regard.
Commissioner, thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Thanks for your service, too.
Not a problem.
Appreciate it.